Welcome to the second episode of the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. I was going to come up with a witty introduction, but Callum says we should just crack on and get into it. I'm Ross. I'm speaking to Callum.
Yep.
The big event that came most recently on the Jiu Jitsu calendar was the Europeans, the first major of the year. Callum, what's the main headline coming out of the Euros for you?
Well, I think the stand-up performance obviously was probably Mica. 4 matches, 4 submissions. First time we've seen him in a gi major since his suspension. So that's interesting to talk about as well. But yeah, 4 great matches, 4 submissions. Really showing how well-rounded he is. His top game, his bottom game, his stand-up. As well, kind of sets up this big match everyone's been wanting for a while, which is the rematch of Mica versus Tynan. Tynan's kind of been ruling over the middleweight division, even though he didn't win last year. But hopefully in summer, this is going to set up a rematch between Mica and Tynan.
So first of all, Mica at the Euros, 4 matches, 4 subs. As we predicted on our first show, no signs of ring rust because he'd been pretty active on the competition scene, albeit not in the IBJJF tournaments. Didn't look like he'd missed a beat, and he's definitely, seemingly, the man to beat at that weight. What do you think? You see him on a tear until the Worlds?
Yeah, it's when you say the man to beat, it's funny saying that considering Tynan's in the division and he's kind of been the most dominant guy. It's funny to say that Mika's the one to beat, but it's also not wrong. So Mica, well, technically he won the lightweight division, the last one that he did at Worlds, but obviously that's been revoked now and given to Ty because of his drug suspension. But I think just overall showing and performance, then they're definitely 2 of the top guys in gi right now. So I think it's going to be very exciting to watch. But you say Mika's the man to watch. I can't really disagree with that, although Tynan's been a very dominant force in that division.
Albeit coming off a loss in the final last year to Jansen Gomez. Could we see Jansen play spoiler in that setup?
Yeah, so we don't know what weight division Jansen's going to be doing. He's competed at middle heavy in the past. I think he's quite big for the middleweight division, so I don't know if he just wanted to do middleweight that 1 year to try take the crown off of Tynan and improve a point, and now he's going to go back to his natural weight class. We don't know if he's going to hang around at middleweight, but definitely if Jansen's in that division, he's already proved that he can spoil the party by beating those kind of guys. So it'd be cool to see him versus Mica as well, another rematch versus Tynan. But I think everyone would like to definitely see Mica versus Tynan at some point, whether it's through IBJJF or some sort of super promotion as well. That would be really great to see.
So we're giving Mika MVP for the Euros, the official Oracle Award. Yes?
Yeah.
Callum agrees. Now, we could run through every winner of every division in the Euros, but you can look it up online. It's easy enough to find on the IBJJF website. What we're going to try and do is talk about some themes that we saw across the matches at the adult black belt division. So the first theme that we've agreed upon that we think carried across the divisions was that top game's a must if you're to win. And I would say that was highlighted from Taliesin winning Roosterweight, where he was able to consolidate sweeps and then, while on top, score more points with passes, right up to the heavier weights where you had Adam Wardzinski, who we chatted about in our preview and said had a much improved top game. In the final, was able to sweep Fellipe Andrew, come up on top, pass him out, get the win. So I think regardless of the weight class, you can't just get by these days on sweeping and being swept back and then sweeping and hoping your sweep is the last one to score. You really need a dominant top game, regardless of the weight. What do you think, Callum?
I think that strategy in general, just kind of hoping that you're the last one to sweep. It can be a bit hit or miss. I think the other side of just being a guard player is characters like Mikey Musumeci, who would win divisions just by Berimbolo and everyone taking their back. Obviously, that is usually like enough to win a match, just taking someone's back, especially if you've got good back control or finisher from the back as well. Good submissions with ankle lock, stuff like this. So, yeah, we've not really seen that much since Mikey. Obviously, it would be good to see Mikey come back in the gi and see if he could still do that. In today's jiu-jitsu, but I think in general the top game has gotten a lot better, so it would be interesting to see whether he could get away with that these days or not. But for most people, except from these outliers, then I think, yeah, definitely you need to be looking to consolidate your position on top, whether you've swept or the other guys pulled to that position, and then looking to stay on top from there, looking to work to pass.
Your point about the Berimbolo and the back take, I think's exemplified in the final between Elijah Dorsey and Espen Mathisen.
Yeah.
Espen looked amazing through the weekend, taking backs, using Berimbolos, but Elijah on top is an absolute unit, and very hard to shift to threaten sweeps and wrestle ups, never mind taking the back off Berimbolos, etc. So you're going to run into players like that come the deeper parts of the divisions. And yeah, I think you were super impressed with Elijah as well. It was one we spoke about before the event as someone to watch, but he looked incredible through the whole event.
Yeah, he's very strong stand-up game, very strong top game. He just seems like when he gets on top, he's a bit of a immovable object, very difficult to even just off balance, let alone get a score on. So I think he's very difficult to deal with. Yeah, I think probably the best way to deal with him would be to have strong sweeping options, be able to wrestle up, or just beat him in the stand-up and get on top. Because I think when he gets on top of you, it's a very difficult thing to score on him.
I would say watching him in the Euros, but also thinking back to watching him against Nicky Ryan at the trials.
Yeah.
He is a great example of watching someone's skeletal shape to see the strength of their jiu-jitsu. He's always in amazing structures that are very hard to break. So you look at the sort of knee middle split squat, which I refer to as a squunge, because you've got one leg in a sort of squat shape on the outside, and then your knee in the middle's in more of a lunge shape. He uses that very well, but he uses that to switch between other strong shapes, often going like two knees to the mat against guys who might elevate to the leg lock. So he's mobile, but all the time in incredible body structure while doing it. So I think like if you want to watch Elijah, really try and watch it just as if it's an X-ray and see what he's doing with his body, and I think you can pick up a lot from it rather than looking at like passing techniques, for example. So I think he's one of the best at moving like that while on top. And like Callum's saying, like to deal with someone like that is so hard. So you should see the value in being that person on top.
Yeah, I think as well as just his patience on top as well, like you're saying, willing to go on his knees to avoid the leg locks, even though he's probably not going to pass off of there. He's not just thinking like, okay, I need to be passing. Like if he feels like he's in danger of getting swept or attacked, he's quite willing to just like hunker down and kind of get through that situation, then get back to his passing. So I think it's a lot of maturity and patience in his top game as well. Just knowing once he's there, he's got a lot of time to ride out the match, whether he's up in advantage or not, or just wear on his opponent and eventually get the pass later in the match.
Yeah, I think we see something similar with Joseph Chen recently as well in the no-gi, and both of them also have the ability not to just skirt on the periphery, but actually like put weight into the top, into the bottom person, particularly weight into and over their frames. And it makes it really hard if someone's willing to put that pressure on you and then back out and do some round passing and then fatigue you with the round passing and then come back in and put heavy pressure on again. And I think they're both great exponents of that.
Yeah.
Maybe they should take on each other in a match. That'd be exciting, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that was a theme I saw across a lot of the matches, just the necessity for a top game from Rooster to heavy. Talking about the heavy division, I would argue, and I sent you a message right away after watching the final between Fellipe Andrew and Adam Wardzinski, that the heavy weight divisions in the gi right now are way more exciting than in no gi. And I have people I much prefer to watch in the heavier divisions in the gi than no gi right now. So I'm thinking of Erich Munis, who once again put on a fantastic showing at the Euros. Aforementioned Adam Wardzinski and Fellipe Andrew, who had a great battle in the final that Adam won. Gutenberg, who looked amazing. Um, and then you also have guys that weren't competing there who have that who will do no-gi and gi, like Victor Hugo and Kainan. And you can still throw Merigali in the mix, even although he's not really doing IBJJF by the look of it. But those guys in the heavier weights are amazing to watch, and the depth of that class, the elite players at those weight brackets is, I think, so far ahead of what no-gi has to offer. So I'm all about the heavy guys in the gi. Did you enjoy their matches that you saw,
Yeah, they were
first of
good.
all?
Comparing back to Nogi as well, I think a bit more versatility of those guys willing to pull guard to start the match. I think at some of the heavier
Yeah.
weight is a bit of not the most entertaining wrestling to watch going around. So it's nice that these heavier weight divisions and the gi guys are willing to just get the match going straight away, pulling guard, and then working from there.
Yeah. I suppose the one thing on that, we were talking about whether any of the gi heavy players like Erich Munis or Felipe Andrew would go no-gi, and the thing is, they really do use the lapels in order to sweep. So doing that in no-gi can obviously be difficult because there's no lapel. So how do they modify their game so that they're able to start the same way? I mean, would they get sucked into the sort of boring head clubbing wrestling that we can see, or would they find ways around it?
Yeah, Eric's game's definitely very grip orientated. We've seen Felipe Andrew do a little bit of nogi. I actually find this very funny because he caught his classic double sleeve triangle in nogi just by grabbing two of the wrists. I can't remember exactly who it was against. I think it was maybe against Hulk. But it's interesting when you see stuff like that, guys trying to play their gi game in nogi. Obviously, that situation it worked out for him. I don't know if everything is directly applicable, but yeah, be cool to see if there was any sort of innovations with these guys coming over and trying to modify their gi game to no gi, or whether they would just kind of change up their game and play a more traditional no gi game.
And the next part of the message I sent was slightly tongue in cheek, but then it's slightly serious as well. I said Gordon Ryan should put on a gi and get in the mix with these guys because this is where the best heavier players are at. Now, it's not going to happen, and nor does it have to happen. Gordon has made it clear that he is focused on no-gi grappling. That said, I would make the argument that if you want to be the best, you've got to go out and beat the best. And I think, like, although he's put himself in pole position with his performances no-gi, I'd say the guys outside of that would most likely give him a challenge are a lot of these players that are in the gi. And really, to be fair, Gordon does train with Nicholas Merigali, who is pretty much the best gi player in the heavier divisions. Closely challenged by a lot of these guys, but I mean, you could make the argument that Merigali has the edge. So why not? Why not put on the gi and have a go against the likes of Erich Munis and Fellipe Andrew? I think that strength of opponent is way higher than what Gordon's going to face just solely focused on no-gi.
I think an interesting question on that would be I would presume if Gordon decided to do the no gi, sorry, you would figure all these things out and work all these things out. But right now, if you took Gordon and you put him inside Fellipe Andrews' double sleeve, or you put him inside Erich Munis's lapel guard, is his understanding of jiu-jitsu and just his fundamentals and the way he moves his body enough to deal with those positions and shut down those positions, pass from those positions, or would he actually need to specifically look, how do I deal with this guard? How do I pass this guard to be able to deal with that? Or does he have enough understanding of just like basic jiu-jitsu to be able to deal with that right off the bat?
And if he has to evolve, we might enjoy the process of seeing that happen, because part of the reason why I think we both enjoy watching Gordon is because he's always evolving his game and you want to see what comes next. So if he did run into some difficulties early doors, it'd be interesting to see what he came up with to deal with it. And it might be completely different ways of dealing with it to what we see conventionally and help push the game on. So, I mean, ultimately, sport's about winning. It's not about trying to push the boundaries of the gi game for Gordon. But I do think that, like, one thing I would say about his current position is that I don't think his strength of schedule, as it were, has been that strong over the last few years. And I would like to see him play against better credentialed grapplers. I think it says a lot that, like, Victor Hugo, even although like not massively experienced no gi, probably gave him like his toughest match in the last few years. Only went down on points. And then going back after that, I think you have to go back as far as Buchecha to see like a truly elite, world class, top level grappler against Gordon. And again, he was gi based and could do no gi as well. So I would they're still and they're still kind of kicking about, and that's a rematch that's probably been on the books for ages. It's just not being put into place. But that would be surely a tough test for Gordon, especially the
Yeah.
way Kynan looked at the last ADCC. On that, there's a question we want to ask the audience, so you can contact us on through our Instagram channel, Jiu Jitsu Oracle, or you can send an email to jujitsuoracle@gmail.com. Gordon, incredibly well-rounded no-gi, amazing everywhere, wrestling, guard, submissions, you name it, he can do it, but doesn't do it in the gi. Mica Galvao, we argue, is able to do it at every part that the match may go to, gi or no gi. So we think right now Mica is the most well-rounded player. He can do it regardless of the clothes that he's wearing, and he can do it regardless of where the match takes place. So, is there anyone else you think that we are overlooking when we say that? Or how far back do you have to go in history to find someone as well-rounded as Mica Galvao is now? Which is quite a frightening prospect, isn't it? Because Mica is still incredibly young and has much development to do, no doubt. So let us know what you think. We think Mika's leading the way right now in terms of well-roundedness. But we're open to hearing your challengers to the
Yep.
lofty crown that we have bestowed upon him, as well as MVP. And give us your thoughts on Gordon against the heavies. Should Gordon throw a gi on and take it to these guys? Or would you like to see any of the gi-based players give no-gi a go for a little while and see if they can actually get to the point where they can take it to Gordon in a match? Last big point from the Euros, we just want to give some love to a particular team that had an outstanding display across the weekend, but a team that I think is starting to, although like they've been at the forefront for ages, they're really starting to sort of set themselves apart with what they're doing, and that's Art of Jiu Jitsu. So first of all, who do you want to give a nod to from Art of Jiu Jitsu for their performances over the weekend, Callum?
Well, obviously in the men's division, Gutenberg double golden, um, won the absolute division, won the ultra heavyweight division. Looked really good while doing that. Taliesin as well, really kind of starting to establish himself as the king of that roosterweight division. And then the women's division as well, got Margot Ciccarelli, really starting to actually win these majors, as we spoke about before. Just kind of been right on the cusp, but since moving to AOJ, she seems to be doing a lot better. And then we have another women's division that you spoke about as well.
Yeah, I think they managed to take home 2 women's titles. There was Shelby at the lightest of the classes, and then uh, one that you'd mentioned before on the preview, Mayasa got to the final. Was that right?
Yeah, she lost in the final. Interesting because we've kind of spoke about Margot going to AOJ, doing a lot better since getting there. I mean, one performance isn't enough to really kind of paint a picture or anything, but Maista is kind of the opposite. You could say she's done well at AOJ as well, but obviously before she was very dominant. Now she's just lost the final, which isn't typically like her. But again, it's one performance. It's not really enough to kind of paint a solid picture. These things happen, so it'd be interesting to see if she can bounce back when it comes to Pans and Worlds.
But I would say AOJ typically noted for their lighter weight male players, and we're now starting to see them move into other divisions. So getting a good group of women together, able to compete at the elite level, and then you've got Gutenberg at like the heaviest of the divisions, looking incredibly strong. So I think they are becoming more rounded as a powerhouse. It's not just like the typical lighter weight divisions. Why do you think Art of Jiu Jitsu's sort of becoming more successful, as it were, becoming more of a force?
I think it does kind of stem from Guy, how he runs his gym. Obviously, he's a mastermind of jiu-jitsu. A lot of people argued a lot of Hafa's success was even from Guy and his coaching of Hafa and his help of Hafa. But obviously, he's done a great job bringing a lot of his athletes through the coloured belts, winning a black belt, and then as well recruiting athletes from other gyms. Just the way that he kind of runs his practices and runs his gym in general seems to be a lot better structured and more professional than other gyms.
It sounds strange saying this right now, but is Guy Mendes perhaps the most underrated guy in Jiu-Jitsu for the amount of love that he generally gets in conversation when it comes to people talking about goat this and goat that, and um, what he's achieved in the game as a player and now a coach, as well as essentially being a general manager at Art of Jiu Jitsu, and you see the reach of their program and the fact that they're now opening a second location and just becoming bigger. I think I'm saying that because Guy achieved loads in the sport as a competitor, but just probably like when I hear people throw names around, that yeah, I don't hear as much going his way as probably he deserves, and you could probably make the argument that he is underrated for his standing in the game.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anyone else who would be like, because I'm thinking of, like, you hear about like love that Danaher gets from everyone, right? And he's achieved a lot, but I think Guy is a player and a coach. The fact that he's able to take athletes from very young age all the way through, like Tainan, and that we're only going to see more of that. The fact that he's able to recruit great athletes and make them better. I think probably he is underrated compared to like a lot of the comment that flies about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to talk about people that had their own successful careers as athletes and then being coaches, could argue people like Fabio Gurgel, but I don't know how much influence he really has in the gyms that he's kind of affiliated with Alliance. I
Hmm.
don't know, is he in the gym all the time coaching? We don't really see that from him, so it's hard to tell. So if you're just talking about it from like athlete into coach, I don't really see anyone else that comparable to him. Melky, obviously, in the gi, he's having some great success, but he seems like he's kind of in earlier days of developing his gym and his athletes. So he might be, from a pure coaching perspective, a contender towards gi down the line, but it's more just kind of top end right now for him. We've not really seen as broad of like a program for all his athletes coming through. So that'll be interesting to see down the line.
Yeah, because I would even say as a competitor for all his achievements, probably Rafa is the one who's talked about more when we talk about the Mendes brothers. And actually, there's not much between them, right? I mean, they were both incredibly successful, multiple-time world champions. So I don't know, maybe it was just like Rafa's style was more eye-catching.
Yeah, I think the no gi accolades as well for Hafa, the two-time ADCC champion as well, perhaps. But
Yeah. Well, join us on the Guy Mendes hype train. We will keep it running, no doubt. Now, as well as the Euros, there were a couple of other events that took place over the weekend, just gone. Just want to touch on them because I think there was a couple of interesting points came out of the events. Not going to dive deep into the results, but the first event I want to talk about is Pit Submission Series. That was run through Karate Combat. You had Helena, Luke Griffith, Dan Maniseo from New Wave on the show. If you want to see what happened, you can find it on YouTube. It's free to view. But the most interesting aspect, I think, was the environment where the matches took place. The clues in the name, it's a pit essentially, but it's matted floor, and then round the edges there's a bank, so you can view it as a sort of triangular structure running around the edge. So it's not at 90 degrees, which if you had, then you'd be into wall wrestling, much like we're watching MMA, which can be unexciting. And if you take the bank away, then you've got open sides, and then you can run into two problems. One, you can have constant resets of bringing athletes to the middle, or two, it can be like the ADCC where they just let guys scrap on the floor uh, of the carpet in a hotel ballroom, which I always think's a bit unbecoming for like probably like the premier grappling event in the world. World Championship qualifiers and guys are scrapping on the carpet. So I think it would be hard though to have the pit in a tournament environment, but for 1v1 matches, I think the environment's got some merit to it. Would you fancy a match in the pit? Do you think it would suit you? Yeah.
I think
Um,
it actually worked for a tournament. I was just kind of visualizing that there. You would just have like a raised bit between all the ones, then you could have the corner refs kind of actually sitting above. Might give them a better view. It would be interesting to see.
Seems like the event would end up running in a sort of structure like Innoflate, or like some of these like what we call them, amusement parks with like lots of inflatables in them now. Um, but I think like if it does, I would say two of the things that are most frustrating to watch in grappling are constant resets in the middle, and then like guys in subs like spilling off the edge, and either like the sub continuing it, all becoming a bit of a mess, or try to reset things in the middle again. So if it's working to help that, then it's not a problem. And then, yeah, the wall wrestling, like I mentioned, that can become like UFC title fights where it's just 5 rounds of people like up against the cage. That can become a bit tedious to watch. Now, there was another event I didn't actually know about it till you messaged me, so perhaps it needs to be promoted a little bit better. But it was called Battle of the Promotions, and it was a quintet style event. So that's each team has 5 people, and basically the aim is to have one of your guys or all 5 of your guys run through the other team. So if you win, you generally stay on. If it's a draw, both guys are eliminated. Now, what I saw when I looked at the results before deciding whether to go back and watch it is that the team that ultimately won had 2 quintet matches, shall we say, a first round and a final, but within those matches there were 5 draws. So that immediately turned me off. So I was having a bit of a go at the quintet format for bringing up a lot of draws, and I think sport's about winning and losing. But you're more in the camp of you don't mind so much as long as you're seeing exciting jiu-jitsu. Am I right?
Yeah, like obviously there being no wins means there was no submissions, but there could still be good jiu-jitsu to watch within that. Looking back at the most recent quintet, like the Polaris versus B team segment, there was no submissions in that. It was still very entertaining to watch, but I think your point of view is you want to see like a definitive winner.
I would say pretty much every sport, and I watch a lot of sport, is set up so that there's definitive winners. And even in sports where draws are more welcome, like football, it's over a league season where there's potentially 38 games to decide the champion. So there's plenty of games that are won and lost along the way, as well as some draws. So I think it's like, it just seems a bit silly to me that you could have like 2 matches, everything's draws, and then we basically have a penalty shootout at the end, an EBI style overtime round where, you know, there's still not submissions, it's just one on like time for escapes. And then that's how you determine who wins the event. I'm not disputing that there haven't been exciting quintet matches and that it doesn't have a place, but I think as like a panacea, sometimes I hear people after a quintet event jump on that bandwagon and say like, no, this is the most exciting format and we should be doing everything under quintet. And I think just like the results that came out of that show at the weekend show that perhaps it's not necessarily the way to go. And then the last one we want to quickly touch on is the match between Pedro Tolo and Tommy Langacker on 1. And it's a match that neither of us have watched, correct?
Yeah.
And I would say that we are both massive fans of grappling. Is that right?
Yeah.
But the problem in this match, and like I am not adverse to paying to watch grappling, but when it's one match on a bigger card, then I'm unlikely to pay a pay-per-view price. I think it was £20 in the UK just to watch, you know, a match that actually we saw not that long ago.
Time I think was free on YouTube.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a tough sell.
Yeah.
And then the only way I would potentially go back and watch it is if I heard it was absolutely amazing and it's a must-see. But by all accounts, Cade won pretty decisively, so I don't think we learned that much coming out of it, really. But
No.
if one want to keep getting guys on and making like exciting matchups, as long as there's like a multiple of grappling on the show, I might be willing to buy the pay-per-view. But when it's one match amongst a lot of Thai boxing that I'm not that interested in, then it's going to be a tough sell. So, anything else you want to touch on, Callum, from what you saw over the weekend?
Not from this past weekend, no, I don't think so. I think that covers most of it. Got European trials coming up next month, which is one of the next big events that I'll be looking forward to seeing. But as far as this past weekend, I think we've covered most of the bases.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Euro trials in depth, and then the next big show we'll probably be chatting about in depth, the next Who's Number One. So
Yeah.
I would imagine the next edition of the show will be heavily focused on that. In the meantime, because Top Game's a must, Callum's going to be back in the gym, working his top game, making sure the sweeps are consolidated when he comes on top, and working on passing to Mount. So Because you're prepping for a match in the not too distant future, right?
Yeah, on Grapple Fest.
You're in Grapple Fest, which is at the start of March.
2nd of March, yeah, so about a month away now.
And on pay-per-view,
It will be on
yeah, so
paper.
you can buy and watch the show. And I was having a go at pay-per-views that don't have a lot of grappling on it. If you buy the pay-per-view of Grapple Fest, you will see a lot of grappling. The clue's in the name. So we'll get more into that as well. Callum's next big match.
Yeah.
But for now, go and work your top game. It's essential.